Hey there. It's been a while, hasn't it? Now, I'm not saying I'm going to go back to doing all the stupid readings I've done in the past, but something just stuck out. Like someone was purposefully trying to get my attention. And that is with There Is a Light by Mothman It's Real. Guy Fieri didn't know what he was looking for. He didn't even know he was looking. But when a strange entity enters his life, Guy only knows that his life has been irrevocably changed. Hopefully for the better. Chapter 1: The Art of Getting Lost. Guy Fieri didn't know what he was doing as he soared down the empty highway. The road stretched ahead of him farther than his headlights could illuminate, and he could only see the barest glimpse of the open fields spreading out around him. He knew he should be back at the hotel right now, relaxing after a long day of filming and getting ready for his daily call back to his wife and children. But he wasn't familiar with this area yet. He had taken a wrong turn at some point. Instead of pulling up Google Maps on his phone, he had kept driving. He didn't know if it was the night air, or the fact that he was alone, or even just the silence, settling over everything like a well-loved blanket. But something about driving tonight was calming him. He loved his life, loved being the personality he had crafted for himself, but he never really got the chance to just sit back and step away from it all. It was that kept him going, he thought. The foreignness of it all. Guy always heard the sharp, shouted orders of the cameraman, and never the soft rumble of wheels beneath him. His eyes were always fed the piercing stage lights, and never the soft pinpricks of stars glittering overhead. Beside him, the radio began to buzz with static, and he frowned. He had turned it off so that he could appreciate the silence better, but it seemed to have turned itself back on, the knob twisting itself to a blank space between channels. As he listened, the sound seemed to shift, sounding more like squeaking. He reached over to turn it off quickly. Guy felt his car shudder beneath him, and he cursed, the harsh sound cutting through the fragile peace he had been enjoying. He pulled the car over to the shoulder of the road where it stuttered to a halt. Guy pushed his way out of the car into the night, darker now that his headlights had gone out. He moved his way to the front of the car and pulled up the hood, looking down to investigate the engine. It was a losing battle. He didn't have a flashlight, and even if he had been able to make out more than a vague outline of the metal glinting in the moonlight, he had never been much of a mechanic anyway. He pulled out his phone. No signal. Great. This night had gone from a well-needed break to a major annoyance. He lowered the hood again and pulled himself on top of it. He ran his hand through his jagged, frosted tips before leaning back and spreading out, turning his gaze towards the stars. If he just let himself relax, he might be able to recapture that peace from earlier. There was a rustling sound in the field next to him. Guy didn't let himself turn his head, but his entire body tensed up, the hair on the back of his neck raising. Guy knew he was a fairly tough guy, but he didn't want to test himself against anyone who was hanging out in the field in the middle of the night. His heart lurched in his chest, and he wanted to throw himself back into his car, but he didn't trust himself not to make any noise. Besides, even if he did get back into his car, what then? He might not be so exposed, but there was nowhere for him to go. There was another rustling sound, closer than before, accompanied by a squeaking sound that was too similar to the noises the radio was making before the engine gave out. Guy made a decision. He would count to 3, slowly. 1. Guy made himself focus, his vision narrowing to a single point up in the sky. 2. His muscles clenched, his legs feeling stiff and weak at the same time. 3. The noise sounded again, this time right next to his ear, and he threw himself over to the other side of the car, a strangled gasp escaping his lips. He yanked the car door open and threw himself into the driver's seat, breathing ragged, his trembling fingers slamming into the lock button as soon as the door was closed again. His heart was in his throat as he turned the key, prayers hovering on his tongue, held back by quivering lips. His heart almost stopped in relief as the car began shaking beneath him, the familiar rumble starting up once again. He peeled away from the side of the road, his car making an ugly grinding noise as he yanked the steering wheels around as fast as it could go in an effort to turn around swiftly on the narrow road. Guy didn't let himself stop to think until he was far enough away for his heart to stop trying to leap out of his chest, traveling swiftly down the road that would bring him back to the safety of the hotel. When he finally let himself look into the rearview mirror, he thought he saw a pair of beady red eyes glaring back at him. He didn't stop. He only pressed down harder on the gas and hoped he wouldn't run across any police officers on the way back.